Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday, Sunday. Thank you for joining us today. Hope everybody's doing really great. Let's just ask for your support right away with the likes and the thumbs up and the comments and the subscriptions. We'd love your support. So today, I've had a couple things on my mind I wanted to talk to the ladies about. As you guys know by now, I am a huge Kathy Heller fan. So I listen to a lot of her stuff like all the time. And she brought up this subject a few days ago that, sometimes when you hear things, you're like, oh, yeah, I've been thinking about that in the past, or that's been on my mind. And so it was a topic that I wanted to explore a little bit today with the pod. Caroline, I don't know if you remember, but many years ago, well, it's probably been about 5 or 6 years ago, living on my own. I don't know if we've talked about this live on the pod before, but my husband and I were separated for quite some time. So I lived on my own in my own house. He lived, in our house here in Santa Fe. And it was a rough patch. And it was the holiday time. Carolina and my sister were talking about Christmas presents. And she was like, well, what do you want for Christmas this year? And I remember looking at her. I don't know if you remember, Carolina. Do you remember what I told you? I just said, I just need some peace.
You told me you want peace.
Mm-hmm. And so for Christmas,
Oh, you still have it. I got her a pillow that says peace.
she got me this peace pillow, which, yeah, I love this pillow. I still have it. So I was listening to Kathy because she's been doing like this 14-day reset. So we're recording this at the beginning of January. So I'm doing this 14-day like reset challenge with her. And she said something the other day that really just reminded me of how I was feeling and why peace is important. And I think we've talked about this previously in the past. We talk about the things that we want for our lives. We want more income, a different job, a different kind of relationship. We want these things, but what we really want from those things is the way they make us feel. So what we're really chasing is the feeling, right? And we've talked about this here that, those feelings are available without the things, right? So how do we get to that point that we're able to experience the joy and the serenity and the courage and the love, the happiness without necessarily having the thing that we say we want, because what we really want is the feeling. So that kind of brought me back to this thing that I really want from all the things that I want in my life, which is this peaceful feeling, this ability to feel ease in my days and feel peaceful in my days. And Kathy said something. She's like, well, what if peace was the standard? Like, instead of a goal, what if we set our standards? Instead of focusing on new goals every year, like, why don't we focus on upping our standards? And what if that standard was peace? So that's where my mind has been over the last several days. And sorry, I'm looking down at my journal because I take a lot of notes. And then she said something else about along the lines of that in order to get to that standard, we have to have the discipline. Not discipline and then like, I'm going to discipline you, but discipline as an act of devotion. Because this whole program is kind of about how you start your days. And we've had this conversation too on our pod about a morning practice. So this whole 14-day reset that Kathy's been doing has been about starting your day with the discipline of a morning routine. And again, this idea that discipline can turn into a devotion, and then that devotion kind of sets up your behavior. So that's what I want to talk about. Like, what if we make peace our standard? And I know, offline, we always talk offline before we hit record. We all have things that maybe don't necessarily align with the idea that we're going to have this discipline of peace and hold that standard for ourselves, that we're not going to stand for outside factors, interrupting that peace. Because, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't expect other people to do that. That's never going to work. We have to hold the standard that peace is important to me, and I'm going to set up maybe boundaries, or, I'm just going to have that standard that no, you will not interrupt my peace, or I will not allow certain things to interrupt that feeling. So that's what I want to talk about. That's what's on my mind today. So anyone want to chime in?
For a long time, I think I sacrificed my peace because I had the role of a mother. And
I was assigned to this role and I put it before myself. And it took me in my 40s recently to say, no, it's okay for you to look after yourself. Because if you're not straight, everything that you're trying to build up, build around you, it's not going to be, it's like building a house on an uneven foundation. And so I think I sacrificed a lot of peaceful times in an effort to be the standard of mother that maybe I felt like I needed to be. Of course, I fell short. I have fallen short. I fall short all the time. Like even this morning, I didn't make my bed this morning, and I usually always make my bed. I was really tired this morning. So just the little things, we can't expect everything to be perfect. But I do think that we are responsible for our own peace. And just like our lovely friend Erin, I'm sorry to say this, Erin, we say this all the time. You can only control what's here. Like, I can't tell you how often I think of that, like probably on an every other day basis, and we are responsible for our own peace. And actually for a long time, most recently, I hated that word. I felt like it was thrown out all the time. I need my peace. I need my peace. Well, get your peace. You're responsible for your peace. I'm not responsible for your peace. So learning to provide your own peace, I think is still a daily something I have to work for every day, because you have to make sure, I can't let this get to me. I can't let these comments get to me. I can't let that. How can I stay centered in my own peace? It's a work in progress. It's not constant. Let's just say for me, it's not constant when you have so many relationships around you. Maybe if I was on an island and solo, but you got to deal with coworkers, friends, children, spouses, boyfriends, and you can't control beyond your nose.
And I think it is really important. It does come down to how you start your day. Because I definitely have a more productive day, and that brings me peace. When I feel like I am doing something valuable and being valued, I feel more joyful and then, that just spirals into, more at peace. But if I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I don't want to face the day, my mind is heavy, my heart is heavy, I feel like I have too much that I just can't even get started, that's when I'm like, just feeling like I'm drowning and I'm like just trying to keep my head above water. And sometimes it can be very, very basic things that make me feel heavy or take away my joy. And it really has a lot to do with how you get up in the morning. What is your morning ritual? What is your morning practice? And I need to take my own advice, because those days where I do have my morning ritual are definitely better than days where I just don't want to face the day.
I've started also to work on being more conscientious of those first few moments of waking up, and to just take, and I typically do wake up with an alarm clock, but sometimes I wake up, naturally. So like before getting going, and I think we've talked about a lot of this stuff already, but before those, like in those first few moments of waking, instead of just jumping up right away and reaching for the phone, which I think is something that we all do. I mean, I do because it's my alarm, but if I'm waking up naturally, I'm purposely like pausing in those first few moments, breathing. Mina, you talked about breath work before, and I've been trying to incorporate more of that, like really intentional, like a slow inhale, slow exhale, doing that for a few times. And then I've also been kind of hearing Shannon's voice where she says, God, show me how good life can be. But kind of retweaking that and saying, okay, God, show me how great today's going to be. And just kind of setting the expectation for a different kind of experience instead of the, okay, got to get up now and got to go to work and got to do this and got to do that. Just, even if it's 20 seconds of some deep breathing and some just setting the intention in my brain of how I expect that this day is going to go. And not because I don't think that there's going to be problems, because things happen. I mean, we just talked about the water heater for Minu, and then you get rear-ended, or, you get the call from the kid, hey, your kid's failing, or, stuff happens at work, because we know that life is going to throw curveballs. But I think if, for me at least, setting the intention that today's going to be a great day, not because nothing bad's going to happen, but because I know there's something bigger than me in charge. And that's been a good way for me to start my day. The challenge that I come up against is kind of carrying that through the day, because it's easy to focus on that in the morning when in the stillness and the quiet. And then once I get into the hustle and bustle, sometimes I have to like stop myself and remind myself what I intended for my day.
Yeah, I think it is about, the laying that foundation and how you start and where you're focusing your mind and your thoughts. And I know when I don't do that and I just kind of tumble into my day and, my day shows up that way and my ability to respond in a way that I would prefer would go better for me. My reactions probably aren't at their best. So I think when I start my day that way, I can have the ability because life is going to happen. You're around different people all the time, depending on what you're doing during the day. And not everybody's on the same wavelength when things will happen. But I know for me, my ability to respond to those in a better way is it happens that way when I'm intentional about it and start my day with those habits. I love that you talk about just the simple thing of making your bed, Shannon. I know when I do that in the morning and then I come home, at the end of the day and it looks so nice and peaceful and it's not like, the room looks tossed. Those little simple things, add up to a lot, keeping your home comfortable and so when things do become overwhelming, because they will, everything doesn't seem to bear down on you as much.
Yeah.
I think that's a
So,
really, really, oh, I'm sorry, Mina, go ahead.
no,
I've been
go ahead.
talking.
You complete
Oh,
your
I was
sentence.
just going to say that I think the intentional management of our home environment is really important, just like you were saying, Erin. And it's so funny that you guys are talking about the bed because since I've been living with my husband again for the last few years, he doesn't make the bed. And that's a practice that I've always had, is making my bed. I mean, that was ingrained in me as a child to make my bed in the morning. And I told him actually just yesterday, because I've been, thinking about peace. I said, I need you to like be with me on this in the morning and I want us to make the bed. And, some people don't get it. They're like, well, you're just going to get back in it later. And the dogs are always on the bed and this and that. I'm like, yeah, but I just like you said, Erin, I feel better coming into my house, into my bedroom and being like, oh, the bed looks, it's like inviting, right? Because that's where we go to rest at the end of the day. And I want that to be an inviting space, but also just my home in general. Like I've never done well with clutter and with, we live in New Mexico. There's a lot of dust. And so like I have to dust like 2-3 times a week and we have a fireplace, a wood burning fireplace. So we get ash and dust and whatnot. And coming into a home and it being messy and dirty, like that interrupts my peace too. So that's a standard that I hold myself to, which can also sometimes lead to issues because I do spend a bit of time cleaning, vacuuming and dusting. That like it has to happen in my house like 2-3 times a week because of just where we live and the fireplace and the dogs and the dog hair. So that's a standard that I hold myself to. But again, sometimes that's like, oh my gosh, you're cleaning again, you're vacuuming again. Well, yes, I am. So, Minu, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
That's so for me, peace is my truth meter, from the time I wake up. And if it costs my peace, it's too expensive. I don't want to do that because for me, I need to be internally aligned to go ahead with my day. Not that, my environment will change or, my day won't be chaotic, but I manage my emotions and feelings better if I'm aligned with myself. And I'm aligned with myself and I'm at peace within myself. And I don't like to be rushed in the mornings. My kids know it. I said I hate to be rushed. So when I wake up, the first 1 minute is definitely breathing. And then the first thing I look in my room, what is catching my attention? I go for that, whether it's making a bed or, making, you all know that I have OCD of cleaning. So I make sure my bottles are certain way. And then I'm like, when I'm getting up from my bed and moving, is everything the way I would like it to be? So I'm more peaceful to the area I want to go and work. So, peace actually starts from the moment you open your eyes and then you have intentional setting that I am okay and I will have a chaotic day, but I am not abandoning myself. I will follow, I will just keep moving. It's a choice that you have to make and you have to constantly remind yourself. That's what I do. Nothing is easy or perfect, but you just snap it. And I'm like, what choice will I make? Do not let anyone, whether it's your external environment or your little voice inside you, disrupt your peace. So if it costs, it's expensive, you don't need it.
I'm sure you guys have all seen Wicked, the you familiar with the Gravity song where Alphaba says, if that's love, it comes at much too high a price? It's kind of that same idea. We, like you just said, Minu, some things are too expensive.
And I think once you know how to be peaceful within your own self, and there is so much of chaos and turmoil, it gives you a clarity. When you just calm yourself, take a 30 seconds break and, have your hand on your heart and say, it's gonna be okay. It's not end of the world. Just 30 seconds of that intentional breathing can reset and align your thoughts. And nothing comes out of fear. And most of us operate out of fear. Yesterday I met with my friend who's a therapist, and he gave me a beautiful gratitude journal. And I was like, oh, shoot, I should have got it here. He says, it has a beautiful quote from very renowned people on the top. And then it makes you think of what intention setting is. You write 3 goals. And at night, what went right and what you think you could have done better. And I was like, oh, darn it, I should have got it here because it's still sitting. And I thought that my intention setting would be to start writing from today, but I'm like, maybe I'm going to start from tomorrow, because sometimes aligning your mind and body is so important. Half of the piece is right there when you aligned your mind and body.
I heard
Very
on a
well said.
podcast recently, it was the 333 was the idea, and it is doing 3 gratitudes a day, 3 acts of appreciation. So you could express it to someone else, your spouse that you love, and then 3 things for self-care. For yourself during the day, but taking the time to reflect upon that at the end of the day too, of what did you do, and really making sure that you focus on that each day, because life can get so busy, during the day, especially working, and, can take you off track. So I really like that concept, and I've tried to do that the last day, just one day, but I did that yesterday, just trying to get my mind in that mind frame. I also think too that peace comes down to personal responsibility. It really is all about you, because the things around you will distract. People will make choices that you don't necessarily like. And for me, I've observed, in other situations where it's this person is doing this thing to disrupt my peace, and, I need to just move them away from me. And I don't think that's, for me, maybe that's not always the answer. It's really about going back towards yourself of, okay, what's my response and how am I handling it? And why am I letting someone else affect me in that way? And taking personal responsibility for what I'm doing and how I'm responding and reacting. And sometimes that may mean, yeah, I need to step away for a minute and take a break. But I think it's less about what everyone else is doing.
A lot of people confuse peace that you are trying to avoid situations. My daughter sometimes say, oh, you're a peace lover, so now you're going to avoid this hard conversation. And I always tell her it's not about avoiding those hard conversations. It's about having them without losing myself, So I take a step back and I evaluate what I'm going to talk and how I'm going to talk, so that you are actually listening to me and not just hearing. So I tell her that, it's just the opposite of what you're thinking. Choosing peace takes courage. It's not easy to choose that path. It means you're setting boundaries, you're telling your truth. You are owning what you believe in. And a lot of people won't honor that, but you need to honor that, even when it's uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that you are weak. It's actually very powerful. And I constantly work on it because I struggle in setting boundaries.
Me too, especially when it comes to family members who are really I'm close to, and I want the best for, and I struggle with that. And I think in one particular case, it's the straw that has broken the camel back. Like, how much can you take? But it's really difficult to set those boundaries with people that you love so much. And I wouldn't even say set the boundary. Setting boundaries that's easy. It's following through on those boundaries.
Well, and it still comes down to personal responsibility, though, because it's like you can be like, oh, I set a boundary and you crossed it, and like that never lands very well on anyone. That no one was like, oh, I appreciate that you are talking to me about this in that way. If they ever responds that way in a situation where you're talking about that topic. But if you look at it, and you feel that your boundaries have been crossed, I think it still comes down to personal responsibility, because what did you allow or say yes to that you really didn't want to do? Or you you spent your time in a way like, a good example as a mother, I think we oftentimes take on more than we might be have the capacity to or the energy to. And sometimes it's okay to say, I can't. I just simply can't. I can't add another thing to my list right now. But I know in my life I've taken on those things and said yes. And then I get resentful towards other people. It's like I've got too much going on. And, but really it came down to me because I'm the one that said yes and added that additional thing to my list.
That's true.
Yeah, it's your response. It's your response to certain situations or stress or, the thing that makes it feel like too much in that moment, in that day, in that week, in that month, whatever it may be. It's our response that creates those boundaries and, leads to that peace. But I like how we started this. Like, what if peace is our standard, not something that we're necessarily trying to attain or reach, but something that we expect. And that's just how we handle ourselves and situations around us is with that expectation of, okay, this is going to remain peaceful. This is how I'm going to respond. This is how I'm going to react in a peaceful manner.
Yeah.
You
And I
said it
think
very
that,
right. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Oh,
I
I'm
was like,
sorry.
Dina said it so right.
She
And
did.
if actually peace become your standard, you feel steady or you feel respected. You have more clarity. It's more nourishing. It's not exhausting and draining.
And I think one of the things about having standards, whether your standard is peace or whatever, however you define it, is some people are not going to like that. People are going to push up against those standards. And I think maybe unfortunately, maybe fortunately, some of those relationships, those people will fall away because you standing up for your standards doesn't sit well with them, or they can't abide by that standard. They hold themselves to a different standard. And so I think with having those boundaries or those standards, some people are not going to be able to move forward with you. It's very much like the bridge conversation we recently had. You're setting the standard of this in the conversation we're having today. The standard is peace. And so we're going to start walking across that bridge, and some people aren't ready to come along.
If I ask you what peace looks like to you, what is your standard of peace? What would you say, Paula?
I think we talked about this in a previous conversation is how do I feel at the end of the day when I'm ready to, and again, I think another good practice is, how we begin our day, but also how we end our day. Something else that I'm putting into practice is maybe journaling or just that silent reflection of gratitude. I think gratitude just can totally rewire our brain. So ending my day with how I started, with God. Or, and again, we say God, but whatever that means for you, thank you for lately, you guys, and maybe you've seen this where you are, but the sunsets, oh my God, have been so amazing. Like the colors that I see in the sky at night have been incredible. I feel like every day I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful to be seeing this moment.
Let me take a moment
colors.
to bring it in.
Yeah. And the moon too, like the moonscapes have been amazing in the last few weeks. Starting my day with, all right, God, today's going to be a great day, not because nothing's going to go wrong, but because something bigger is in charge. And then ending the day
you are with me.
Yeah. And because I'm remembering who I am. And again, I feel like, all of our conversations kind of circle back to things that we've talked about before. Some of the one, and remember Mufasa, remember who you are.
Remember
Trying to remember that I'm a soul, that I'm, again, some of the one, a piece of the master. Those are all Kathy Heller's words. So again, starting the day with that mindset of the day's going to be great because something else is in charge and because I am part of that. I am some of that one. And then coming back at the end of the day and reflecting on things to be grateful for. Like today, it'll be this conversation. It's always on Sundays, connecting with you girls, connecting with my friends. And then whatever else went right today, whether it was the beautiful sunset or my dogs and my cats bring me so much joy when they do something cute. Like Nilo over here earlier in the day, he comes up to me and he just kind of lays his little head on my lap. And that just warms my heart. So just little things that I try to be on the lookout for, to remember that in spite of the chaos, I have all these things in my life bringing me peace and bringing me joy and bringing me moments of gratitude. So that's how I define it. What about
well
you?
Said. For me, it's a presence of self-respect, self-reflection. I feel when I'm at peace with myself, I can handle conflict better, whether it's the emotional turmoil or in the chaotic world. I'm more aligned. My answers are more well thought of. Even when I'm like, well, English is not my first language. This is not what I'm thinking in my mind, but it's not coming the way I would like to say. But I will always choose peace. If it costs my peace, I do not need it.
So then the question is, what if the thing or the person that is disrupting your peace, as we're saying, what if that's your spouse? What if that's your children? What if that's something or someone that you said yes to, that you allowed in and that you've made a promise to? And that's where I think we need to circle back to the conversation we had about the bridge. Nobody wants to get left, right? And as mothers and as guardians, we have to circle back. We have to look back, even when we're moving forward. We have to look back and try to bring people with us. Because that for me is peace, when I know that I am living up to my promises and what I said yes to and what I chose. It's important to remember who you are, right? Like how Paul always says, and what we said yes to. We said yes to marriage. We were chosen for motherhood, and sometimes you have to circle back to those that maybe have disrupted your peace. That is our duty. That's our calling. It's in our hearts. So I love meeting when you're like, when you have those moments that are bringing you some turmoil. It is so important, to place your hand on your heart, to place your hand on your soul, and just breathe deeply and know that you are made for more, that you are made to handle this moment. I like that.
Beautifully said. Scoopalicious.
We talked about, you had mentioned peace from a spouse, and I kind of went through this and I heard all the time, I need my peace. Well, I think I feel like when you're in a relationship, you guys are a mirror of each other. If this person is ignoring you, if this person is making you not feel like a priority, what kind of reaction are you going to get from that person that you are pushing to the side and sweeping under the rug? How can that person be in a peaceful state when they feel so unloved and underappreciated? Whereas, let's flip that. You're my wife. You are a priority over everything else. And then we glow. And this has to go, I'm sure it's for men too, but I can say from a woman's point of view, when I'm in a relationship, when I'm feeling appreciated, when I feel like I am also important, I give the same in return, and that it just creates a peaceful dynamic. But when you have one partner who is a negative Nancy, it crumbles. It's hard to be around that. And you want to back up and you want to retreat. And that's harder in these relationships that we've made choices to be in. So I am definitely reevaluating that in this time of not, and I'd kind of like to address how I find my peace. I don't want to find it in a partner. And now I really, really know what I want and what I'm not going to put up with. Having been with somebody who had I was in a long-term relationship, he had no social media, he didn't need all that attention. And then going to somebody who I felt like needed all this attention. Now I'm aligned, okay, we're going to have these certain conversations because this is what I need. And this is what I'm willing to give in return. And that's important. We have to say and set our boundaries from the jump. This is what I need. And
this is okay. What I stand for.
Yes. And it's okay if you cannot meet this standard. And real quick, and I don't want to take over this. So I don't get into online conversations with people. I typically don't, because people annoy me in there. You can hide behind a keyboard. But I had mentioned being celibate in a post. And this guy, he's like, oh, well, you must be real fun. I was like, yes, I am. And then another person said, you're not going to find somebody who's going to wait for you unless it's a man of God or just marries you just to have sex with you. And I'm like, I do want a man of God, a real man of God. And I would certainly hope that someone's not going to just marry me just to have sex with me. First and foremost, he's going to have to date me for a long time. So that's going to be committed. And then the other question was, is he required to be celibate as well while you're dating? So anyway, I get off on a tangent, but all this to say is I know what I need my peace to look like. And I'm so glad I'm here. And I'm so glad I had two very different angles in the last two relationships I was in to formulate my peaceful bubble.
You said something about, thank you for sharing all that, because you said some really wise things there. But you mentioned something at the beginning of your conversation there. We cannot find peace in someone else. That is non-existent. And, we don't need a therapist to tell us that, right? But I'm sure any therapist, if any of them are listening to us, would agree with that. We can't look to other people to give us that peace. It has to come from, again, the standards that we hold ourselves to. And again, if that relationship, that person can't meet you there, then it's like Minu said, the price is too high. Because at the end of the day, we're waking up and going to bed by ourselves, in our hearts, in our minds. It's us. So we've got to hold up that standard. We've got to hold, and then we also, I think, at times have to hold that mirror up to ourselves.
So you can be the light, so you can be the peace for others and to others. Absolutely.
And also, I think if we're laying our heads down at night and not feeling the things that we want to feel, the peace, the joy, the serenity, maybe it's us, maybe it's me. So I've got to turn that mirror on myself sometimes and be like, okay, you know what? I'll bring this up. Sometimes I can be a real bee to my husband because he will do things to try to bring me love and joy. And I find myself criticizing, like, I love my husband. He's not the best cleaner. He tried to do the dishes the other day, but then when I went to put them away, they were still like crusty and dirty. And that's the thing that I focused on. And then I'm like, I look at myself and I'm like, why did I do that? Instead of showing appreciation and like accepting the gesture, because he was expressing love. And in hindsight, I can see it for what it is. But where did I go? I went into criticism of, look at this knife. It's still crusty, dirty. So I have to turn that mirror. I have to look in the mirror sometimes and, and walk the talk, right? Because I say this is how I want my life to be. I say that I want peace. I say that I want love and joy. And then when it's being offered, in a way, I'm rejecting it. So who wants to go? Minu?
Go ahead, Minu.
You remember last week I sent you a text and Scopalicious, you responded when I asked you what word would you choose for yourself for 2026. And this is such a great segue to end this podcast on that, of what it means to you. Like for me, it is to elevate. I want to elevate, not to rise above others, but to rise within myself. So which one is yours? I will ask Scopalicious.
Mine this year is living fearlessly. I have some plans and I am going to do it without fear. I'm just going to jump in. And I've already kind of started doing I have started to do some things. I am getting rid of the word can't and I'm going to do. And I can't think of anything I just said can't, but I cannot think of anything that's going to stop me.
That's just a fancy can't.
Right. Fearlessly. I want to live fearlessly this year. I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to take the dive. I'm going to ask the questions because the answer is always no if you don't ask, right? I'm asking all the questions. I'm using all my resources.
What about you, Erin?
Courage. Yeah. Similar to what you're saying, Shannon, that just taking this, the leap of it's going to work out, and if not, you pivot and move from there and just keep your feet moving. But yeah, the courage to just keep going and going after my dreams this year. Heart of courage is Kerr, which is heart. Yeah.
That's a really hard question. I always have a hard time with those questions. Like, describe yourself in one word, this in one word. And it's like, well, I don't know. I have so many words.
Scopalicious.
Simplify. What comes to mind, I guess, is spirit. Spirit lead me, spirit guide me, like surrender to where God wants to take me. There's a song, I can think of the words in my head, but I can't think of the name of the song. It's by Oceans. I think the name of the song is actually Oceans. And she just keeps singing, Spirit lead me. And I definitely need to allow that in my life because I do feel like sometimes I am worrying too much about things instead of being led and guided. And knowing that everything's going to be okay as long as I'm faithful.
All are you?
Well, a lot of everything that you all said is on my agenda for 2026. Definitely action. So I totally align with that with Scopalicious. Like this is a year of action for me. But to end our conversation,
peace.
So well said.
So thank you all for joining us today. Leave us a comment and tell us what your intention is for the year, what your standard is for 2026. And thank you
tell
again.
Us what word are you choosing? We have given you a few options.
Please share this with others. We'd love to know. And then I want to talk about it. I want to talk about some of the great words that people share with us.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for joining us on the Sunday Sundae podcast. We wish you a beautiful day and we will see you all next week. And happy Sunday Sundae.
Happy Sunday Sundae.
Sunday.